and stuff. And that was actually kind of my response to when they were like, hey, there's seafair, we're in PMTs. I'm like, we're doing inspections. Like, what do you want from us? We're not there. Because that's actually true. We were like gone. Like there's people that are training right now. It's all over the place. But it's cool because you're never really in the office until you become an H1. You get sat with kids in the big fields. Last minute packages and correspondence and things like that. So one big thing to really remember, correspondence is huge. We really hope to see a second chevron on you guys here. Once you hit E5, that's when we really need to start picking up on correspondence. Make or break, honestly. And you have someone like me, possibly the ones here as well, your chiefs that have been doing admin for a long time. You look at something, you're like, that's off by 2 spaces. Check on your computer, it's off by 2 spaces. It's how it is. Green side's easier because you can use Courier News still. But we can in the Navy. All right, so Navmed P5052, TAC 26, the Shipboard Pest Management Manual. All PMTs, including IDCs, and basically any quad zero can actually do it. I carry my license on me here actually, so I have my Shipboard Pest Management certification, and my Cat 8 and my BLS card. I remember at Great Lakes Course School, they're like, guess what, you gotta carry your BLS card wherever you go. I said, yes, HM1, because that's, I was young and naive. Still kind of am. This is pretty important, just like HM1 was saying, there's a lot of things that are gonna be on your exam, and they're gonna go all the way literally from, well, not no longer the E4 exam, but your E5, E6, and even up to E7 going all the way up. It is pretty important, and if you took a look at the sheet that I handed out, probably one of the biggest ones there, right? So you're gonna have, and I actually put in there, your most common stored product, Pest, your most destructive, and you'd be amazed at how big these things actually are. Like the rice weevil, which is the most destructive one, is about the size of the little pointer on the inside. It is tiny. Carpet beetle, or the domestic beetle, even just as small as that, and one of them literally condemns the entire lot, just like what you were saying. And when I mean lot, I'll explain to a little bit further over here. Commanding officer of a U.S. Navy vessel must ensure senior enlisted medical department representative, the SMDR. Hospital corpsmen are responsible for pest control and are certified for shipboard pest management. That's the card that I just showed you. Any other PMT that's in here, you probably should be carrying yours as well, especially if you're doing that, because that authorizes you to spray pesticides inside of the U.S. Navy vessel. Civilians, like you can't call Orkin, you can't call Terminix, you can't call whoever that works in the 757 area to say, hey, can you come spray? You can't do that. Only shipboard pest management personnel, preventive medicine technicians, environmental health officers, and entomologists are the only ones that are actually allowed to do that, all right? This is what they're overall taking care of, your MREs, your inspections, pesticide safety, MSDSs, now known as SDSs, but that manual has not been updated, so don't worry about it. If you see MSDS and you don't see SDS, it's MSDS. Record keeping and reporting, that's a huge one. Regulations and program guidance, basically teaching other people. Procurement of pesticide dispersal equipment and PPE, so that's going to be your respirators. I think I have like 6 respirators at home, like actual, like with canisters respirators that I just kind of collected over the years because they have a certain lifespan. You're only supposed to use the cartridge for like 8 hours, things like that. So I'll take another one, sir, go over to IH and just grab another $500 respirator size. They're sitting in my storage unit right now. Navy entomologists are assigned to the Navy Entomology Center of Excellence. That's NECE, that's in Jacksonville, Florida. I'll write that one down, it's read for a reason. NECE is where all of the entomologists are. You have a couple of quad zeros, you have PMTs that are there, and they're basically the ones that manage this entire manual. If anybody's interested in chapter 8, which is entomology, and for the P5010 was just updated. So they all coincide with each other. It was just updated maybe like 2 weeks ago. It was released. They provide guidance, on-site consultation, conduct education and training, review and evaluate pest control measures. So they are the bug world of the Navy Marine Corps Force Health Protection Command. So Navy Marine Corps Force Health Protection Command, they also have their entomologists there, but they just provide general guidance overall. These are the ones that you're going to go and say, hey, why is it that every time I spray pesticide on a roach, it keeps going, but then it dies and it just flips over? You guys ever notice the cockroaches when they're dead, they just flipped over? You didn't know it's actually the synergistic effect. similar to acetylcholine, which is like the impulses in your body, that actually causes them to like jerk when they die. So they just, that's not in the test. Education training requirements, so medical department personnel responsible for respiratory operations, which is going to be your IDCs, they can't go to the course as well. PMTs and entomologists have to go to that course. Shipboard Pest Management course, which is a CAN-track course, catalog for Navy training. So 1 day of classroom and then 1 day of actual field training aboard a ship or a vessel, or simulated. If you can't get on a vessel for whatever reason, basically you just do it as simulated as you can. I can't presume we don't have any vessels over there, so we basically go into a simulated area where we're teaching people how to like do things like that. Basically, we went into an EFK, an expeditionary field kitchen, tactical field kitchen, and kind of like showed how it would work because it's really cramped in there. Yeah, the Navy entomologist is the only ones that can actually like get certified. All right, so right now the program manager is Miss Remmers. I have a really good report for her. She's in the Air Force actually, but she is the one that controls the entire program for the entire like Navy. Go figure, right? She's in the Air Force. She's a major too. Well, you really got to know anything about that. The annual training is required. So every year, even PMPs, we have to go back to that training over to the NEPU, which locally provides it here. You don't have to go all the way down to Nisi, but they do it here. Certification for shipboard pest management is a year. Shipboard pests. You really got to know about that. The food service areas are basically where you're going to find a lot of them. Your sculleries, which is like wash dishes. Your mess decks, where the food is made. Maybe also referred to as a chow hall, depending on what kind of ship you're on and who you're there with. If you're with the Marines, they're going to be like, yeah, that's a chow hall. They're not going to say the mess decks. Ship stores, soda storage areas. Basically, like if anybody been on a ship, like the big ships, if you ever go into like an actual like carrier, there's like food stores like all throughout the ship. Like if you're like on like the Essex, for example, they have a Starbucks on there. Like I was like, this is insane. So but I was embarked, so I didn't really help them. I just drank a lot of coffee. Your heads in your showers, snack areas. All right, German cockroach. I wrote it down in your document that I gave to you. It is the most commonly encountered pest on naval ships. Both USNS, which are the MSC ships, and USS, which are the US Navy vessels. US ship. They basically like the same things that we do. Water, food, and warmth. Right? Basically, every living organism is asking for the exact same thing. What is that? Moisture, air, heat, just oxygen? Yeah.
Mont.
Yeah. Basically, it's the exact same thing. Every organism requires the exact same things. This is going to come into play a little bit later. They can be killed within 48 to 72 hours for the temperature. So the German cockroach is small, flat, and light brown. If you can't really see it here, but those two black stripes that are right there, that's what they call lieutenant bars. That's how you can actually find it. Then you can identify, and you can say without a doubt, that is a German cockroach. Because if you get into the weeds and you're like, oh, that's smoky brown. Oh wait, that's an oriental. Oh wait, that's a water bug. For some reason, people call cockroaches water bugs.
North Carolina a lot.
Yeah, North Carolina calls them all.
Because they say that's not a cockroach, it's a water bug. It doesn't completely look like a cockroach, but it's a big ass black bug.
What do they call it? Palmetto bug?
Yeah, palmetto bugs. I think Florida, that's more where they call them that. It's really weird. I don't understand why. Cockroach is cockroach, water bug is water bug. There's a lot of them here because obviously we're in the Hampton Roads Tidewater area where there's like a lot of inlets. They're entirely different. Smoky brown and all that other stuff. But the only one you need to know, most common German cockroach. Adult female cockroaches produce a visible egg capsule called the ootheca. They basically, if you've ever seen a cockroach, they have like this little thing that looks like they're like peeling their skin off. That's actually like their egg sac. They're I believe it's 50, yeah, it's 50. 30 to 50 eggs mold. It's supposed to be actually 50 eggs. But they're actually in there, and when you open it up, they're like perfectly lined up. They're like insanely symmetric, and kill them, that's what they are. Young ones are called nymphs. They're basically the smaller ones. They don't go through a crazy like change. I forgot the actual term for it, but they're kind of like they stay the same shape, kind of like ticks, until they get older. They just get bigger. That's it. There's a specific term for it. I just can't remember what it is.
Ootheca.
Yes, so right here, that's important, and that's gonna come into play a little bit later. So the reason with this, 80% of the time they spend it in the hardwoods, the other 20% are foraging around. The only reason why is because they are the creatures that like to stay where they cannot be seen. You ever turn on the lights and the cockroaches kind of flee, the two Marine Corps barracks before? Literally what happens, the exact same thing, right? They don't want to be seen. Now, if you ever go into a location, even just as a Quad Zero or 844 or Lab Tech or whatever you are, and you go in and you see cockroaches during the day, you better believe there's a bad infestation. Like, it's bad. If you see them during the day, it's bad.
I have seen that last bullet point on the test before, on the percentage where they spend their time at harborage. So just make sure you know that.
Not really much on this, but yeah, depending on the population. So it's an issue when you go to during like hurricane season, if for some reason we had to establish like FEMA, like helping camps where people are being housed while things are like getting taken care of. You can find it there because they're attracted to what we talked about earlier, right? Food, water, and basically want to be around warmth. They want to be around us. So you'll find it more in those areas. Shipboard pest specialists conduct the surveys every 2 weeks in the food service area and weekly until cockroach is no longer present. So for that, we can use like sticky traps, things like that, so you can see the counts, not actually killing them. You can use the killing route as well, which is by basically setting up traps where they would frequent, which is like against the wall, kind of scurrying around. They'll eat it and then die a little bit later. And then you can make your counts. But this is harder because then you have to like actually go through everything and like, I mean, if you're like with me, you're doing it anyway, but it's just a lot of extra work.
For those that have been on ship, it's easy to remember because through TMIP, they're doing each of these every 2 weeks, and then it'll come weekly if they encounter an infestation on the ship.
Yeah. And even more frequently depending on how bad it is. Flushing agents are used to locating where they are. Basically, it's kind of like a spray. It's like a little mist that you just put into the cracks and crevices, and if they come out, then they start coming out. You can actually effectively kill them that way. But if you do that and they start coming out, then you know where the harborage is at. Basically, it's like playing detective and figuring out where they are. If you find them, then you can go and you can kill them. Yeah, again, the traps are actually more, they're better for finding out where they are and how you're getting your counts. Your entomologist is typically going to say what the threshold is before you can actually spray any kind of pesticide, for the most part. On ships, it's going to be used in the PMT. On small boys, DGs, or destroyers. I don't think we have any cruisers anymore. I think we do. CGs? No, CGs.
They're in the process of decon, but they're still in.
Whatever. Yeah, they're all getting kind of gone. But like even your small ones, your LSC, your littoral combat ships, the IDC who's on the ship is going to have to contact the Neptunes from wherever they're at, so they can actually go out and take care of it. Because again, you can't just spray. And anybody, you can't just go in and spray. Like even if you're just a shipwright, you can't go and spray. It has to be somebody who has a license. These are EPA regulated things, and if you've never heard it, on the label, it has to be applied the way that it is, because the label is the label. Prevention, pier side acceptance inspection. So that's basically, if anybody's ever done that, that's when they bring the food onto the pier side. You're out there with your IDC or your PMT typically, and you're inspecting, making sure that there's no gnaw marks, there's nothing in there, there's nothing crawling out of it, there's no snakes, before it goes into the vessel. Because again, you're putting it into a vessel, which is an enclosed space. And there's a lot, if you've ever been on a ship, there's a lot of nooks and crannies where all these things can grow and hide and breed and do all these things. Yeah, and it's always going to be spot selections. The thing you're always going to remember about preventive medicine is going to be random inspections. And you're always going to have people that are pissed off, excuse my language, because they're like, well, why are you here? Why did you call me? This inspection is random. Because we need to catch you when you're at the worst. Stored product pests. These are going to have two more that are going to be pretty important here that you should write down, but you can just highlight it on the form that I gave you. Over 100 species of insects, mostly beetles and moths, can infest food products brought aboard ship. So, beetles and moths. Beetles and moths. There's going to be categorized into two groups, which is going to be medically important and non-medically important. Medically important, domestic beetles. I have seen that in the exam many times. But you will see it either as domestic, Trogoderma, or Carpra. That beetle is very tiny. I believe that's more at a larval state. Yeah, it's a larval. They're really tiny. Like I'm talking, if you can see that little thing, it's smaller than that. So the hairs on the outside can cause intestinal trauma, eye irritation, dermatitis, and allergic reaction. They're actually also found to be carcinogenic. Long term, they can actually cause cancer if they're ingested. Adult female can produce approximately 100 eggs during their lifetime. Insects don't live very long, like mosquitoes typically only live about 24 hours, like I mentioned. Not to you guys, it's the last class. Those are going to be their colors. I've never seen it down there. What I have seen is going to be Dermaderma, Dermestid, Carpa. All right, and I wrote that down. I tabbed that up for you guys as well, so just remember that. Flower beetles, red flower beetles, and the confused flower beetle. The only difference is that little guy right there. The red flower beetle, they're both straight. The confused flower beetle has one antenna that's kind of crooked.
So I wanted to hit on that last slide because there was something that is 100% you need to pay attention to that is going to be on the test. One of those dead or living larvae is condemnation for the entire lot of food when it's talking about the Capra beetle.
Yeah, that part right there. I was working on revamping this slide and I left it on my desktop because I didn't finish in time. A lot of stuff going on. But do you guys understand like what a lot is? Like what one lot, not like a lot, like there's a lot of you in here, like what a lot is, right? So like everybody's given a vaccine before, right? So you have your lot number. That's a series of when they were done. That's like the series of the specific one. So one can be like 001, lot 001. Lot 003 can have that. But in the same box, there can be lot 001, lot 002, lot 009, and a one lot 003. Fleet-wide, if you find one, if you find a domestic beetle in that, you have to literally contact the NEPU. The NEPU goes on and contacts the neighboring public health center, and they send out a priority message over to the entire fleet, including the MSC ships, the prepositioning ships. If you guys learned, it looks like you kind of did the prepositioning ships, and they have to get rid of it. It has to be condemned because it is a medically important pest. So one, you find one. Those are like that's the biggest one you're going to remember. It is going to be condemnation of the lot. Back to these guys right here, Tribolium, that's the specific genus of them. They can cause the flower to turn gray. I do have some pictures of one of the recent inspections that I assisted on, where you can actually see like the graying of the flower. Flowers typically going to be white. The Navy doesn't really use anything aside from that, maybe rice flower every now and again. Depends on what the Army says that we can use. But it's going to be turning gray. So if you see gray flower, there's very likely a flower beetle in there. That's what they secrete. Produces a foul odor. So, like he was saying, like Ishmael was saying, tolerance level of only 3 per pound of food. So if there's 2, guess what's getting frozen? Until they die for 72 hours at 0. That happens all the time. I think in your lifetime you eat what, like 10 spiders in your lifetime more or less?
Crawl in your mouth while you're sleeping.
Yeah, you eat them. All right, the other 2 that you're gonna write, and this is also on your slide. Yeah, believe it or not, like it's a thing. I was talking about horsemeat earlier. Yeah, we eat bugs like all the time. Sawtooth grain beetle, most common SPP.
Your most common non-medically important.
Correct.
Right? And your most common encountered pest, which was what?
The most common
German cockroach.
Most common non-medically important is that one. Which one is medically important? Domestic beetle. Derma, Capra beetle. Sawtooth gray beetle is going to be the most common you're going to find. It's not medically important. That one has a different threshold. There is a chart as to how many there are that you can actually have before you get rid of them. Usually it's like 5 to 7. And then if you could you have to freeze the food for 3 days, I think, 3 or 5 days. It depends. There's an actual chart that actually tells you how long you're supposed to do it for. And then from there, once it's frozen, take it out, stick it, you're good to go. Nobody's a wise one.
Pay attention when he's going through these, because this is another way they're going to ask it on the test. They love to ask the types of foods these pests eat, and then you have to identify what that pest is. Like I told you before, a lot of the foods are going to sound similar. You need to find out that one word in these that's telling you to know exactly what insect it's talking about, right?
I think in one of the recent tests there was an Indian meal moth because it was asking what gets into like the vending machine.
Yes, vending machine. So this one I would do tobacco products.
Yeah.
For sawtooth grained. I think the cigarette beetle also has tobacco products.
Cigarette beetle, drugstore beetle can eat poison. They can eat belladonna and stuff like that.
But a lot of them will say fruits or vegetables, but find that key word as he's going through these.
The rice weevil is going to be the most destructive, non-medically important pest or store pest product. Long beak and snout. I haven't seen the description of it before on the advancement exam, but it's possible it's on there. But it is the most destructive. So it's the most common, non-medically important, and the most destructive. All right. Raw grains and grain products, but you can kind of imagine that because it's rice. Rice is a grain. Kind of makes sense, right? Indian meal moth. Yeah, this one was actually on one of our previous advancement exams. So the Indian meal moth is going to be dried fruits and storage. Specifically, what they're going to ask is that right there: vending machines and snack areas aboard ships. Or Indian meal moth, snack machines. Cigarette beetle. Yeah, it's a drugstore beetle. Cigarette beetles basically can eat a lot of stuff. They can eat drugs, pet food. Pet food. The reason why it's on there for like ships is because you can't have service dogs. Like if you have like if the SEALs are on there, or MARSOC is on there, they have their attack dogs. Guess you got some dog food on there because what are they going to eat, right? The cigarette beetles can penetrate polyethylene and paper packaging. So this is why when you actually do your pure side inspections and your regular inspections of your stored products, you have to you're in there with like a gun strong 1,000 lumen flashlight to make sure that you can actually see it. When we really get into the weeds, there's a certain lumen that you're actually supposed to have for flashlights when you do inspections. Try telling that when you're trying to order them on Dibbles, and they say no, you're going to get issues.
Yeah.
So again, that's the one word that's going to stand out to me as pet food. I haven't seen it on any other one, so pay attention to that in the question on the test when they ask them.
Drugstore beetle. Biggest thing for that one, it's very close to the cigarette beetle, right? But you can eat almost anything, but specifically poison. Specifically poison. And for that reason right there, wood as well, we're not supposed to have wood pallets inside of ships, only plastic ones. In the field, it's the exception. Book lice.
Just snakes to worry about out there.
Zero products, vegetables, animal debris. Not really that I've seen that before. The only thing that I have seen is like pediculosis. So if you ever think of pediculosis, that's like body lice.
Molds and fungi, if anything, would be what would be I've possibly seen on the test when it's related to the SOCIDs or the book lice.
Yeah, it would make sense too, because having foods mold specifically, like if you're like books, if they're not aerated often enough, they can like rot. So try telling that to my wife all the time. We have a library now, a tiny house. All right, these are going to be your more support forms right there. This is going to be surveillance. So infestations are going to be infestations and actually treatments as well are going to be documented on the DD form 1222.
So two things about that. Don't get it confused with your 2322, which is what? Your lab work authorization form that we went over today. And then don't get this confused about the other form he's going to go over later on. So this one right now is just for infestations. Is going to be this form.
Yeah, the further one is going to be about the actual pesticide application. That's your chart right there for your lot size. That's how you're going to find out if there's going to be an infestation or not. So if you open up a container and you only get 2, then you have a freaking an infestation. But I would focus on that right there. 3 days. They have to be placed in the freezer space at 0 degrees or below for 3 days. 0 degrees. Freezers have to be at 0. Just because frozen or freezing is 32 degrees does not mean that. It has to be 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, the minimum of 2 weeks, and that will kill them in all stages. That's when I said after the 2 weeks, you'll actually take them out and you can like sift it out. Not in the book, but if like you're like in a reduced ration type thing, the commanding officer can just say, hey, just do it for everyone.
All right, so
It depends on what the pest is.
just because I'm confused and maybe I'm reading it wrong, what I was trying to understand, what's the difference between the 3 days and the 2 weeks? Because you're freezing them both times. What is the indication?
Yeah.
Non-edible item is 3 days, and then edible item is 2 weeks. Okay, that's what I want to know. It was looking confusing for a minute there.
Yeah, I've actually never looked at this mill standard before. It's a military standard for all the tri-services. I never looked at it before because I didn't really want to look at it. But it gives you more specifics as to what you're supposed to be like doing right there, right? Rodents. All right. these can carry communicable diseases: plague, urine typhus, leptospirosis, fecal like salmonella. Specifically for this one, plague. We talked about it before. I know it was mentioned earlier today because I kept on saying buboes, right? So with that one, it's more so the concerning a pest, the fly pest that's carried by the flea, specifically, not really the rat. Blame it on the black rat, the rattus. These are some of the characteristics right there. The biggest thing that I would really focus on is going to be when you're walking around your spaces, you're going to look at these, the panelings that are right there. They're going to be rub marks. Because typically, the smaller the rat, they're going to be just kind of going through, rubbing against the sides. Once the rat has become like accustomed to it, it gets a little more bold and starts going out. But it just really depends. It's like a playing game. For the most part, they hide and they scurry through the edges. So rub marks.
It's kind of funny when you actually see what those are, because when I went through the course a couple months ago when I was in San Diego, I was like, holy fuck, because sometimes you remember you see walls and they look like they're just dirty and haven't been cleaned. Those marks that are on the walls are sometimes indicators that there's been rodents in that facility or whatever else. It's literally going to be black marks or smear marks almost where it looks like up against the wall.
You're going to be able to find their poop as well, because their poop is actually going to be a little bit different depending on the type of rat as well. But when you open up spaces and you start looking through things, you can actually see it. And they're not just going to smell something foul. You'll see their fecal matter and you'll see their urine, because it actually does also light up. Give you light. These are the two ones you're really going to find in your advancement exam: the Norway rat, which is known as the common rat; the brown rat, water rat, wharf rat, sewer rat. Right? These are typically larger in size. Their tail and their bodies match for the most part. The way that I always like to remember this one is Norway rats like eating fish and meat. Think Vikings, right? They're bigger, right?
And the one that
rat, ship rat or black rat. This is the one that actually carried. I got the bad news. It's also I forgot to tell you as well. I don't know if it's been on the anatomy exam or not, but the Norway rat is actually called the actual term for it is the Rattus norvegicus. I don't know if it's been on the advancement exam before. I always just remember it that way.
usually when they do that, they like to do that for the diseases and then the mosquitoes with the actual like scientific names for them.
Anopheles and Felix, Aedes aegypti, and all that stuff. But yeah. Rattus norvegicus and I think I wrote it down in the form that I gave you guys. The roof rat is a Rattus. It says right there, it prefers seeds, grains, cereals, vegetables. They are smaller and their tails are longer.
Yep.
And why? Because they need it for balance.
So it wasn't mentioned on the slide, and I brought it last time with Martinez. The question that's been on the test, it'll talk about the tail being twice the length of the body. And that one is we talked about it was the roof rat, right?
The roof rat, yeah, the same.
And then again, looking at those things they feed on that stand out to me. If I'm looking at roof rat, the thing that stands out to me is leather goods, to know that I'm talking about the roof rat. And then the other one just eats the normal shit that's on everything: grains, vegetables, fruit, meat, and fish. But the one that they're going to ask on the test is where they're found. So they'll ask, where do you find these the Norway rat? And it's going to be in the mainly in the holds and decks of ships.
Open your phone, hoping to get some good news, and you're on the watch. House mouse, Rattus domestica, I believe. Smallest rodent. Really don't have to worry about them, but they are going to be the smallest ones. Associated with humans, they can cause damage to electrical wiring, food stores, sweets and grains. They're basically the smallest one you're going to find. So the biggest one is the what? Longest tail is which one?
Black rat.
What's the name of it? The actual name of it? Roof rat. Surveillance, like I mentioned a little while ago, is going to be your rub marks, so called runways. So again, if you're ever walking and you're just kind of like curious, you can just take a look at that side right there. Actually, just go to the parking lot and just
By the dumpsters.
you can see them all over. There's snakes in the parking lot too. It's pretty wild. Like in the panels, we haven't found them. Yeah, that was.
It's like those videos where you see the snakes falling out of the ceiling on top of people.
Like I said right there, they're going to vary in size, the fecal matter, soft, shiny, dark. They're going to be pretty small, maybe about a centimeter, more or less, depending on what they are. You get really into the weeds, it'll show you one's pointy, one's round. Like it's more specific. That one right there is pretty important. They actually cannot control their urine output, so they just pee as they go. So if anybody has like a pet rat or anything, it's literally just peeing. But it is UV like traceable, so you just have your UV light, your pretty powerful UV light if you have one, or a wood lamp or a slit lamp, whatever, and just try and take a look at it. That's like the best way you're gonna get identification that is in fact urine. Prevention, elimination of food to shelter, probably hanging with food, so basically getting rid of trash, making sure that you're being clean, that you're actually cleaning your spaces, keeping your lids on your trash cans, keeping your entries closed. Rat guards are going to be on there for 10 lines. I would write that down right there. And I'd write it down in your thing as well. I would highlight it or anything. That's going to be the diameter. That's going to be what they're actually made of, the 18 gauge steel or aluminum. And that right there specifically has been on the advancement exam a number of times. At least 6 feet from the pier and greater than 2 feet from the ship.
So to make it make sense, because I like to put visuals with it, right? The 6 feet from the pier, right? That means that rat is going to have to jump 6 feet from that deck to the ship. So it's going to be harder for them to jump onto the line, right? Now, you want to have it greater than 2 feet from the ship, so say that they can't jump and get onto the ship from that distance there on there. And the cone, right, you want it to be facing with the big part towards if the rat's coming up, because if it's the other way, what is that rat going to do? Climb right up and over, right? You're basically trying to make it harder for that rat to somehow get on that ship by having these obstacles of jumping 6 feet and then trying to climb up and over a cone onto the ship.
But they can still get in there.
Yep, they still do, but...
Yeah, you find them all the time. They can still get in there, and there is really no requirement as to how many you can put on there. So you can have, at a minimum, 2, right? Minimum 2 rat guards. But if you really wanted to, you can put even more rat guards in between, like to give them even more of like an obstacle, if you will. Bed bugs. So it's not really study that doesn't really matter. But Lieutenant Buckley over at NMCF, HCP, whatever. They're actually seeing that there's a potential that they may actually be able to transmit some kind of disease. They're not medically important, however, they are more of a nuisance. All right, and the issue with bed bugs, which I told you guys I actually have to go deal with that inspection in a little while, is they're very, 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 very difficult to get rid of. Once they're in, it's very difficult to get rid of them. Heat is the number one thing that you can use to get rid of them, however, it is pretty difficult. And one thing to take away from that as well is that it's not a hygiene situation. They're insects that can actually, they're more of like convenience insects. So if you guys know ticks, right? Ticks do what's called questing, which is they just do this, they literally just kind of dance and they catch onto you. They're the same thing. They're opportunistic creatures that just latch onto you, and even if you went to your buddy's room over next door and they have bed bugs, 1 or 2 gets on you, they go over to your room, guess what? You got bed bugs. Yes.
I was gonna say, I think on one advancement exam I took, one of my questions was what's the most morale killing bug, and it is the bed bug.
Exactly, it's a nuisance, right? So that's the issue that we're having with a lot of these guys, and they're pretty bad. Camp June has an absurding on. It's a problem, and when they get in, I mean they get in every.
You know why that'd be a morale killing one, right? You only have X amount of mattresses on the ship. So if that mattress has to be treated, then that person's going to be having some shitty sleep while that mattress. So that's why it's going to be one of those morale things. And then everybody's freaking out that they have bed bugs in their areas too.
Depending on your ship, if you're on an amphib, just go sleep on the well bed. But I can tell you, I played dodgeball on the Essex and on the knot skid. That didn't go very well. Fruit flies can be brought aboard by infested fruits. They're attracted to yeast produced by fruits when they start decaying and ripening. Sanitation is going to be the biggest thing for basically getting rid of all flies, right? Overall, sanitation is the number one thing that you go. As a tech, even as a corpsman, you can actually say, hey, maybe you should clean it. We get pest consulting gets every day. Hey, there's 3 cockroaches over here. Okay, cool. When was the last time you cleaned? Well, housekeeping services can clean. Okay, cool. But do they actually clean, or do they just take the trash out? Because there's a difference between actually having a field day, which I don't think anybody at the hospital does, or just cleaning. That's one of the biggest problems that we're having lately, actually, because you go into some of these buildings and respond, and come to find out they're drinking, a frappe or whatever, and they just let it spill over onto the table, and they're like, "Well, we had ants." That's what we have. You want ants? That's how you get it. Drain flies are going to be the smallest one. Not really much to take away from that, but fruit flies are going to be fruit, obviously. Quarantine regulations, I would remember that portion right there. Any ship that comes onto the U.S. soil has to actually go through quarantine regulations. So all those ships that are actually out there, the ones that are transporting goods, they have to actually be cleared by the U.S. Coast Guard prior to coming in, Department of Homeland Security. If you ever get to do one, the equipment washdown is pretty cool actually. I did it once on the Baltimore Locust. Take everything out. There's ships that are floating around right now. MSC ships that are floating around in the water that can literally are ready to start like war. Like they have tanks, they have ammo, they have food, they have everything. They're just floating around, just waiting to get the call. And like when they come into the port, Blunt Island in Jacksonville, Florida, really hit or miss command that's out there. I would love to be stationed out there. They actually have that where they wash everything down prior to actually going onto the exercise. When COVID-19 hit, I was actually there at one of those exercises where we were actually removing the stuff and replacing it with all these things. Literally, it's insane. Yeah, right there, U.S. Navy vessels in report. I would remember that right there. U.S. Navy vessels entering foreign ports, Maritime Declaration of Health, and Control-Free Pratique. I remember that specific thing.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Maritime Declaration of Health and Control-Free Pratique. So we don't do, the NEPIs are the ones that actually do the SSEs, the UCB SSEs, the ship sanitation certificates. We don't actually do those here. Those are the NEPIs, because that actually requires a stamp in order for you to verify that they're the ones that are actually doing it. For the most part, it's the NEPIs. We did it when I was over in Bangor, because we obviously had ships up in Bremerton, and of course, you know, the subs that were down there. So that's really what I would take away from that. Is you go through all their records, you go through their ship stores, you go through all of these things. It's even worse on the sub. If you've ever been on the sub doing inspection, it is miserable. It is very tight. And you have to let them do things, like there's like food on the ground and they put pallets on top of them because they're just so like tight. A friend of mine is on the sub right now, H1 Vandal, and he was a PMT before. Man, you couldn't pay me enough. All right, remember the other form, the infestation, the 1212, the 1222? This is the actual pest management maintenance record. So this one right here is going to be when you apply pesticides. Once again, who can apply pesticides on a ship? EMTs. You have to have a category 8, and you have to have your shipboard pest management license. Can a civilian spray on a ship?
Yeah, no.
I will write this form down, 1532 TAC 1. That's your maintenance record. That's basically you're in there doing spot treatment. Even if you're doing spot treatment on one of the racks, or applying warfarin for like rats, or Coumadin, excuse me, that's the actual like term for it, you have to apply that on there. Even if you're on shore side, you have to report it, because there's a certain regulation of how much pesticide you can apply. Yeah, the reports are going to be sent monthly over to the Marine Corps Public Health Center, now known as the Marine Corps Force Health Protection Command. They're basically compiled and sent over to them. Most of the bases, Camp Lejeune, for example, we used to swear all the time with the green side, and then compile the report, send them to the representative that was there from the base. That representative, Mike, what's his name? He used to actually send them over to an NCPAC. But, I mean, I'm not there anymore. I don't know if they're doing it anymore or not. Pesticides, you have to wear a properly fitted NIOSH certified respirator. I would just remember NIOSH, right? It has to be an actual respirator. It is not an N95, it is not an N100, it is an actual respirator with eye protection, you're supposed to wear eye protection, and the actual P100 particulate filters. Not much else from that. That's an example of an actual sprayer right there.
So
But now we have different ones. We have the Birchmeyer, which is a backpack one. It's basically like a little hand can. It's now backpack form. We have the Ajiva, which is a fogger. You have the Dynamist, which is your ultra low volume spraying for like, what are they called? Knockdown of like mosquitoes. Did that a lot at Camp Lejeune. You have the Grizzlies. There's a lot of different things that you can use. But they are very regulated because, again, what I mentioned earlier was that the label is the law. So it's very, 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 very stringent as to who can apply and how you can apply. All right, you can't just go and apply. We got into a really big argument with Camp Lejeune because they have what's called self-help, and you can literally just go get cans of Raid and like spray. But that's not how it works.
That's recommendation.
Camp Lejeune they do things the way they want to.
H1 Martinez mentioned this before, but I'm going to bring it up because I have the site pulled up from Navy Medicine. NetMu 2, Norfolk. NetMu 5, San Diego, and it operates in the Pacific area. NetMu 6 is in Hawaii and operates in the Pacific area of responsibility. And then NetMu 7 is Rota, Spain, in the African and European theaters. I don't know if there's any more, but at least from Native Medicine West, I read those 4.
Yeah, that's it. So those are basically the only ones that are going to be out there. Within NetMu 2 and NetMu 5, there are what they call the FDPMUs, which are the 4 deployable preventive medicine units, which are a team. I believe you're in it. Yep, he is actually one of them right there. That's actually part of these small teams that can go out and respond to these things a little more. You guys have known, like the Navy Medicine is actually turning into more expeditionary platforms, so everyone is deployable, which means that there really will be no more shortening. So that's what they're doing the concentrations for a lot of the PMT and entomologists, yeah, mostly entomologists too, and environmental health officers, like things like that. They're really beefing up the expeditionary stuff, basically to respond to.
2025 is when they're supposed to have everything turned over.
Say again?
2025 is when they're supposed to have everybody on expeditionary platform.
I believe so, yeah. I saw that the VMed release that came out. The other thing too, you might see on the advancements I did briefly bring it up. Warfarin or Coumadin, that is one of the preferred agents to actually kill rats. Sticky traps, you don't really want to use them because if you have a sticky trap on there and it has the potential of having like a flea that has, I don't know, Yersinia pestis, you might not want to like grab it because that flea can get on you and bite you, and then guess what? You got a mid-century disease that's killing you. So, yeah, you have to drown. You have to actually kill them. And it's actually really cool. And yeah, you really just should be using it. We have sticky traps here, and as soon as I saw them, I grabbed them and threw them away because it's actually pretty easy and pretty dangerous too. Because again, if you're grabbing it and it's got something that's gross and nasty, then guess who got it now? You do, right? And I don't think it was on there before. But just for you guys' situational awareness, did you ever see a poison drum with the lid open? Poison. You didn't know flies actually eat by puking? Yep. They actually like land on doo-doo, right? And they
That's why I do not like to eat food that flies land on.
Yeah, it's gross. I always throw it away whenever it's in there. They actually will land on it, puke their acids to melt whatever they're trying to eat, suck it up, and then like let's say it's going over to you. Not pointing at it, it's happening right here. Flies over to you, and then it pukes on you to eat whatever you're eating, and then you're like, oh.
It's disgusting.
Pretty gross. But it is.
That's why I hate barbecue sometimes. I'll be like, I'd rather eat my food inside the house.
It's a lot of controls that we have to make. We're doing a lot here because the Mep's about to have a picnic and the air show. There's 50 food trucks we have to go inspect. Good, congratulations.
Another reason why you should cover up your food at these type of events too. Because if you have food out in the open, flies fly everywhere. Just imagine the flies landing on all that food that's getting served out to everybody.
Yeah. All right, cool. That's all I got for you guys.